Looking back on all the choices I've had and the decisions I've made and the consequences of those decisions, I'm still amazed that I'm still finding new things. And that's one of the elements of my identity that I think I'm most excited about, because I'm not the kind of person to be still. Time I realised that there was something going on here was more often than not when I was poorly. I was an asthmatic, I still am, but I was quite poorly as a little girl, and I'd often be sort of sitting in bed and just sort of drawing. That would be the thing that would keep me going. It would take my mind away from the next breath, would be the next pencil stroke, the next crayon scribble. So it kind of worked in that kind of rhythmic process of breathing and drawing. Also, my mother was a painter. She did wood carving things as well, and my grandfather was very creative and artistic too. So it was kind of it's in me, it's in my blood, and that's what I do. So it became totally natural to me to have a pen and paper whilst I was sitting in bed feeling a bit poorly. I have various artists who I find very inspirational, mostly because of what's happened to them in their lives, not just for the quality of their artwork or what I see as the aesthetics of what they produce. People like Stanley Spencer, people like Huey O'Donoghue, Lucian Freud, of course, Francis Bacon, the usual kind of scary figurative artists. But that's because they've lived scary figurative lives, and that's what I really like about them. Because I don't think you can separate the artist from the life. So one influences the other. Again, it's the practice and the theory coming together in a sense. The theory of their life with the practice that they produce in their artwork. Colours are quite important to me, and also sounds are quite important to me, because there's something called synesthesia, which some people have that enable different senses to kind of cross over. And for me, I can get tones from what I'm looking at. So colours can convey some very interesting harmonics, different sounds, or I can hear something and I can see the lines or the colours or the shapes from that sound. So the whole idea of, colour just being that's a colour and that's a sound, to me they totally cross over. And if I have my piece of paper, I can hear what a piece of paper sounds like. And as I draw, the sound changes the piece of paper, and I can start trying to match it up. So I try and match up my drawing to how you sound to me, to how my paper starts to sound. And if I can get a harmonics in the same tone, I know I'm on the right track. Well, when I was a child, I was very, very lucky to have been whisked off to Mexico when I was about 5 years old, as my dad had a job out there. And when you're 5, you're like a sponge, and everything kind of, it goes in and it's like, wow, this is fantastic. So when I got to Mexico, it was so different to England. I was taught Spanish. I did Spanish straight away, so I was fairly bilingual at that point. The Mexican culture I found absolutely incredible. The colours, the sounds, the smells, the Day of the Dead, the flowers, the paper flowers, the fabulous Aztec and Mayan cultures, the I mean, it's just, I feel embedded, it has embedded itself in me. And even though it was, just for 3 or 4 years of my life, it has totally coloured the way I perceive my place in my life. The idea of the mechanics and the sort of cyborg body and biomechanics and robot body came into my work from developing ideas of how I felt when I was having asthma. Now, this happened in the late 80s. I started going back to art college and decided to take more seriously how my physical body and my physicality actually affected the way I did my drawings and the way I perceived things. So I started to do drawings and paintings about what it was like to have asthma. And because I'd spent a lot of time in hospital, and I also would offer myself for experimentation with an asthma research group at Southampton University Hospital, I wanted to draw the process I was going through. So they would put me in what was called like a body box, which I'd have like a breathing tube, and then they would put me in this glass box. Then they would change the air pressure outside, and then they would try me with an inhaler to see what would happen to my lung capacity and all this kind of stuff. So I became part of this medicalised technology in order to research what was really going on with the machinery of my body, which wasn't working properly. So I spent a good 3 or so months with them, helping to test different types of medication and drawing all the equipment and drawing my feelings of being in this equipment and how it was affecting me. So I ended up drawing the technology, the medical technology, as myself in a sense. So I became like this medical robot. And also, as part of that, I became interested in the body as machine. So I ended up doing about 3 months again at Southampton University at their morphology laboratories, and I did some cadaver studies of body parts and bodies that were preserved, and elements of their musculature and veins were kind of exposed so I could actually see the workings of the body, and I drew them like machines. And in turn from that, I ended up at National Power, where I was artist in residence there for 3 months. And the only way I could look at the machinery and understand what I was drawing in the power station was in my mind's eye to turn it into a physical human body. And so I could identify arms, legs, heads in the machinery, or the lungs or the veins or whatever. So the whole element of technology and creativity for me came together. I could not distinguish one from another. We have living machines and we create the machines and they live because we give them life. They're all intermingled. When I was at university, I kind of went off on a tangent because this was where I started looking at my sort of asthma paintings and things like that, and actually started to relate them to technology that was developing at the time. So I saw virtual reality for the first time in London, and it reminded me of myself with the oxygen mask and all the kind of tubing, and you'd see these people with these like big headsets on and lots of tubing connected to computers, and I thought, hey, this is like an analogy for what I used to be like when I was having asthma. So when I was in hospital, so I kind of went totally into the ideas of virtual worlds and electronics, and I started building little robots. And instead of painting and drawing, well, I did do a lot of painting and drawing, but I started going to model shops and buying the little robot kits and making those and having them buzzing around my studio space. And I had sort of mannequins and the usual kind of weird stuff that you see in art studios. And I ended up doing my fine art degree show using an installation and a whole virtual reality kit, because I managed to get sponsored by one of the few virtual reality companies that were around at that time. And my fine art tutors had no idea what to make of it at all. So it was like, well, this isn't painting, but I would say, but it's a contemporary version of painting. I'm still dealing with the content that's been in fine art for hundreds of years, but yet I'm using digital paint. I'm using different notions of space, three-dimensional space. I want to create paintings you could walk into. And at the time, they all thought I was barking. But I've been proven right. Every moment is precious, and that's how I think I live my life, and I think that's how I do my artwork, and that's how I do my teaching. And you know, if I'm going to do a lecture that's like really quite heavy going, I want it to be a lecture that at least some students can really get something out of, for example, so that it becomes engaging, it becomes something they can remember. Because tomorrow you just don't know, or the next minute you just don't know what's going to happen. So it's about being really excited about living every second that you've got, because you can't waste it. You really can't waste it.